What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in this video we're talking about the latest release from Christopher Nolan, known as Oppenheimer. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan and starring an all-star cast of people like Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Alden Ehrenreich, Florence Pugh, and many others, Oppenheimer tells the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the creator of the atom bomb. Hey guys, what's going on, and welcome to my review for Oppenheimer. I hope you guys have been enjoying Barbenheimer weekend, as of course this year it's been one of the most anticipated movie-going weekends of the year, with everybody excited to go see both Barbie and Oppenheimer. And it's been really great to see all the bodies at the movie theater these last 2 days. I did a review for Barbie here on my channel yesterday, and today I checked out Oppenheimer, so we're going to be talking about that right now. But if you guys want to check out my review for Barbie, that's already here on the channel. And either way, I hope you guys enjoyed yourself watching both movies. So let's get into my thoughts on Oppenheimer. This is a historical drama, a biopic if you will, about J. Robert Oppenheimer, who was pretty much titled as the father of the atom bomb, the main guy who worked alongside a bunch of other really talented scientists to come up with the atom bomb, of course, that would lead to some pretty catastrophic things in Japan during World War II. And if you're not familiar with this story, definitely something you can look into in some history books. Hopefully in your life you've learned about what happened in World War II and how this bomb came to be and the role it played in history. But if you haven't, this film is definitely going to give you a history course as it dives deep into pretty much everything that happened in that time frame and really gets into everything when it comes to all of these people. This movie clocks in at literally 3 hours. It's a very long film, and I'm going to start this off by saying it's a very dialogue heavy film, as this is a movie that focuses heavily on telling you the story, giving you all the characters that were involved or all the real life people that were involved, and really is about telling you this story. This isn't a movie that has a lot of exciting big set pieces. This isn't a movie that's, got a lot of, glimmer and glamour on the screen. There's not a lot of visual like kind of spectacle or anything like that. This is a movie that is heavily based around dialogue and telling you this story in that way. So if that's not your kind of movie, if a historical drama that is 99% just dialogue is not your kind of movie, then I don't know that you're going to love this movie. But I'll start this off by saying that I was incredibly impressed, as I typically am with Christopher Nolan's directing. Let's start this off by talking about just the technical sides of this movie. The performances throughout the entirety of the film were top-notch. Everybody gave a fantastic performance, with my absolute highlights having to be Cillian Murphy in our lead role, as well as Robert Downey Jr., as well as Emily Blunt, and so many others. I mean, those are just the top three that come to mind. Matt Damon was fantastic in this film as well, and there are so many roles, down to the smallest role in the film, that was also performed incredibly well. Beyond that, you also have top-tier costume design and set design that take us back to that time. Of course, this is a period piece, so the most impressive thing about a movie like this, more often than not, is the movie truly being able to transport you to a time from the past. And I think that this film, when it comes to all of those technical elements that are necessary to bring you into that world, really succeeded in that regard. Christopher Nolan has also talked about the fact that this film doesn't have any CGI in it, and that is incredibly impressive in and of itself, as of course, like I mentioned before, this is about the creation of the atom bomb, which we do see go off in this movie and was created in a different way with a real explosion in order to make it seem like an atom bomb, but either way, everything was done practically and in camera, and the fact that Christopher Nolan and the team behind this film were able to do that, I think, is pretty incredible. Really enjoyed the look and feel of this film. The cinematography was fantastic throughout. The musical score from Ludwig Göransson, I believe is how I pronounce his name, was fantastic. Really enjoy him as a composer. Definitely not one of my favorites when it comes to him as a composer, but I really enjoyed the tension building that he gave to a lot of these sequences that was really predicated on how strongly this musical score was leaning into that tension. And I think it goes without saying, with all the things I've just mentioned, that the technical elements of this film are absolutely beautiful. I think that Christopher Nolan has created an incredibly good looking, sounding film. The sound design as well in this film is fantastic. There's some incredible moments of sound mixing and sound design, and just overall, this film on a technical level is damn near perfect. This was an incredibly crafted film, and only somebody like Christopher Nolan could honestly ever really truly make a film like this. But with all that said, truly, as far as my personal opinion, I liked the film. I found it to be a really good time. I was finding myself really engrossed in the characters and the narrative as things went on. But if I'm completely honest, this is a film I don't necessarily see myself revisiting too often. It's not a movie that really has that rewatch value to it. That's not to say that it's a bad movie or that it's not a movie worth rewatching, but just more so that it's a movie that is heavy at times, but is also very slow, very long, very dialogue heavy, and isn't really necessarily all that entertaining. I think if I had to look at the two movies that I saw this weekend, Barbie and this one, Oppenheimer, I think Barbie is easily the more entertaining film. It's definitely the one that made me laugh the most. It's the one that I would want to rewatch next. And Oppenheimer is maybe the one that is the better made, in my opinion, but it doesn't have that rewatch value. It is a little bit slow at times, and there are a lot of moments where I found myself a little bit bored throughout the course of the film. But even though I did find myself bored at times, I was always incredibly impressed by all the filmmaking that went into this film to bring us this story in the way that it was done. I think this is maybe the best way you ever could have told this story. Now, one of the things that I struggled with throughout the course of this film was how the first and third act played out. I'll instantly say that I think the second act is without a doubt my favorite segment of this entire movie, with the first act feeling a little bit scatterbrained. They're kind of setting up the tone of the film where we're jumping around from different times, we're jumping around different decades, different years. They would do a different filter over the movie, sometimes black and white, sometimes back in color, to kind of give us that bit of a variation in where we are with time. And so because of that, at times the first act felt a little bit jarring and felt a little bit all over the place. I didn't find that by the time we got to the second act that a lot of those different pieces that were kind of set up in the first act do kind of come together, and it all flows a lot better as the movie progresses. But the first act, while I do think it was still really solid and sets up all those pieces, did feel a little bit messy to me. And I think the second act is where the film is the most exciting, with the third act, wrapping things up and having some great moments in it without a doubt, but ultimately being a little bit more of what I felt the first act was. Not to say it was bad in any way, shape, or form, but just not my favorite parts of the movie. And I think it just goes without saying that this is a movie that I think was incredibly well made, that I was really into while watching it. I just don't really have a massive desire to watch it again immediately. I'll check it out again, but in terms of other Christopher Nolan films, it's not one I want to watch again, even though I thought it was really, really well done. And I think one of the things I enjoyed about this film the most was the fact that Christopher Nolan didn't really take a stance when it comes to the events of the film and history. This film follows Oppenheimer and of course does celebrate the achievement that it was that all these scientists were able to come together and create something they never even thought possible at a certain point, creating this bomb that was able to win the war in this incredibly dark time with, war going on, and there was pressure being put onto them, and they were able to achieve this goal and create this weapon that was an achievement in and of itself when it came to humankind. But also, this film does not shy away in any way, shape, or form from the darkness that this brought, from the absolute terror and misery that this weapon that was created brought into the world. Because of course, as we know, this atom bomb was used in Japan in 2 different locations. The film does touch on that, and it touches on the weight that had on those that actually created the bomb. This wasn't just a woohoo, we created the bomb, we're the heroes now. This was something that weighed heavy on the individuals who were behind creating this bomb. And I really enjoyed that this film didn't shy away from that. I really enjoyed that as a filmmaker, Christopher Nolan showed both sides. The celebratory part that was like, hey, we won the war. And then the other side of it that recognizes that they just created a weapon of mass destruction that brought absolute devastation to tons and tons of people. Overall, Oppenheimer is an incredibly well-made film, if you haven't already gathered that from my review here. I think it's just so well done on a technical level. The performances were fantastic. Again, I really just gotta give massive kudos to the cast of this film. Cillian Murphy was fantastic. Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on. There are so many big actors that you're going to recognize throughout the course of this film, even some that I didn't even know were in this film, that are in very small roles that I genuinely thought were fantastic in this film. I mean, this is just an absolute achievement when it comes to casting alone. And so you add on all the other technical elements and you just have a really strong historical drama here that I think does a really great job of telling this story. While it might not be something that's overly rewatchable for me, it's something I without a doubt was incredibly impressed by, and I'm just happy to have gone and seen two really great movies of two different kinds of genres in the theaters this weekend that I thought genuinely are movies that people should go see in theaters. I think that Barbie is a movie you should go see in theaters, and I think Oppenheimer is a movie that you should go and see in theaters. Again, my biggest gripes with the film is that there are areas where I felt it was a little bit too long. There were areas that felt a little bit messy, and one thing I didn't mention as well is there is a little bit of a feeling sometimes that there's a lot of characters and there's a lot of people that were involved in this story, and a lot of times it feels like, hey, here's that guy played by that actor who comes in to say something important that gets the story rolling, but we won't see them again until later on, and when we do see them later on, I just don't really care about that character or that person. So a lot of times it does feel like there's just a lot of talking heads in a movie already filled with a lot of talking heads. So that's my overall thoughts on Oppenheimer. I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Did you like the movie? Did you not like the movie? I think that whether or not you're going to like this film is really going to be dependent on what you want out of a film like this, and also your personal taste. I think that if you see the trailer for this movie and it just does not seem or sound like your kind of movie, then maybe it's not going to be. If something that seems like it's just straight dialogue and is a little slower is not your kind of thing, this may not be down your alley, but I think it's really just going to depend on the person. So I'll stop rambling now. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say, so leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.